Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajacharya Sutras His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnavani Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavrindi Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktavrindi Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Nandi all glorious devotees, all glorious devotees, all glorious devotees, all glories to Shri Guru Angaranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tojayamutirayat Nasparsha Vajreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhaktinashki. For ascend the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, this most human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasa, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and living service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, established as a reliable fact. Om Ganatranam Dashagananjana Shlakaya Shakshramritamina Tahasva Shikurvemaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishram Savitamina Bhutale Svayam Pakadamayam Dadhati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shiguru Shiyata Parakamalam Shigurun Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sargachitam Sahagana Raganatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Virjana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vidamshta Ye Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dena Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhikanta Namostade Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhani Stute Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhivevcha Patitanam Pavnevyo Vaishnavyo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Girara Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna, my dear Prabhus. Very nice to see you all today. You know, I was starving last night, and Lalita and Kirtan very graciously fed me. And so I was able to do some research for this class because I wasn't hungry. So I got the mercy of the Vaishnavas. It's only by the mercy of the Vaishnavas we can do anything, right? Yeah, it's like they say, by the mercy of the devotees, one gets the mercy of Krishna. But it also works the other way around. By the mercy of Krishna, one gets the mercy of the devotees. So I definitely get the mercy of the devotees. So today, we're continuing our study of the fourth canto, chapter 24, entitled Chanting the Song Sung by Lord Shiva. And today is our last verse before Lord Shiva begins speaking. So we're going to be covering text 26 today. Satan Prapana Natiharo Bhagavan Dharma Vatsalaha Dharma Gyan Shila Sampanan Prita Pritan Uvachaha Satan Prapanartiharo Bhagavan Dharma Vatsalaha Dharma Gyan Shila Sampanan Prita Pritan Uvachaha Satan Prapanartiharo Bhagavan Dharma Vatsalaha Dharma Gyan Shila Sampanan Prita Pritan Uvachaha. Alright, please chant.
Bhagavan Dharma Vatsala Dharma Gyan Shila Sampanan Prita Pritan Uvachaha Satan Prapanatiharo Bhagavan Dharma Vatsala Dharma Gyan Shila Sampanan Prita Pritan Uvachaha Bhagavan Dharma Vatsala Dharma Gyan Shila Sampanan Prita Pritan Uvachaha.
Okay, word for word. Saha, Lord Shiva.
Lord Shiva,
Tan,
Tan,
them.
Him,
Prapana, Prapana Arti Haraha.
Prapanarthikara,
One who drives away all kinds of dangers.
one who drives away all kinds of dangers.
That word is really hard for me to say. I apologize. Bhagavan,
Bhagavan,
the Lord.
the Lord,
Dharma Vatsalaha,
Dharma Vatsala,
very much fond of religious principles.
very much fond of religious principles.
Dharma Gyan,
Dharma Gyan,
persons who are aware of religious principles.
persons who are aware of religious principles.
Shila Sampanan,
Shila Sampanan,
very well behaved.
very well behaved.
Vritaha,
Prita,
being pleased.
being pleased.
Vritan,
Prita,
a very gentle behavior.
a very gentle behavior.
Uvacha,
Vajra,
talked with them.
talk with him.
Ha, in the past.
In the past.
Translation. Lord Shiva became very pleased with the Prachetas, because generally Lord Shiva is the protector of pious persons and persons of gentle behavior. Being very much pleased with the princes, he began to speak as follows. All right, we'll repeat. Lord Shiva
Lord Shiva
became very pleased with the Prachetas,
became very pleased with Prachetas,
because generally Lord Shiva
Lord Shiva
is the protector of pious persons
is the protector of pious persons
and persons of gentle behavior.
and persons of gentle behavior.
Being very much pleased with the princes,
Being very much pleased with the princes,
he began to speak as follows.
began to speak as follows.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Krishna, is known as Bhaktavatsala. And herein we find Lord Shiva described as Dharmavatsala. Of course, the word Dharmavatsala refers to a person who lives according to religious principles. That is understood. Nonetheless, these two words have additional significance. Sometimes Lord Shiva has to deal with persons who are in the modes of passion and ignorance. Such persons are not always very much religious and pious in their activities, but since they worship Lord Shiva for some material profit, they sometimes obey religious principles. As soon as Lord Shiva sees that his devotees are following religious principles, he blesses them. The Prachetas, sons of Prachini were naturally very pious and gentle, and consequently, Lord Shiva was immediately pleased with them. Lord Shiva could understand that the princes were sons of Vaishnavas, and as such, Lord Shiva offered prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as follows. So, a little bit of a shorter purport today compared to what we've been having. But there's nectar in every verse of the Bhagavatam. So this chapter started off talking about Prithu Maharaj and then his descendants. And one of his descendants, Prachini Bari, who is, as we remember, was very expert in performing karma kanda sacrifices. And he could follow all the rules and regulations of this perfectly. So Prachini Bari was one of the Prajapatis along with Manu. And so his sons, the Prachetas, he's giving them the order to also become Prajapatis. But they've gone to perform austerities first to prepare for their dharma. So this is why it's described that they're doing dharma. Srimad Bhagavatam, it starts off from the point that people already know what is to be done and what is not to be done. They know about duty. So the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about the divine and demonic natures. And one of the characteristics of people that are demons is they don't know what is to be done and what is not to be done, nor cleanliness nor truth is found in them. So civilized human society has a particular dharma, a particular duty, a particular role. And human beings follow that. That's why in positions where they can best make advances. And people were generally more bound by their duty in a Vedic society. Even in America, especially in India, go back 100 years, people would think more about duty. Is this right? Is this not right? Do I have a particular duty to do here? It wasn't so much about, do I feel like doing it or do I not feel like doing it? One of the things that I've heard some of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada say is that one of the things Srila Prabhupada was kind of shocked by when he came to America is that people tend to be very whimsical. Yeah, they'll take up something and then they'll give it up very easily. He was kind of shocked when people took initiation and they vowed to follow the four regular principles, and then some people then gave it up. In fact, when a disciple went to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I was, very young when I took these vows. I didn't know what I was doing. And Prabhupada said, why did you promise? Only an animal breaks his promise. Because in a Vedic society, when someone made a promise to do something, they did it. Also, Srila Prabhupada in the very beginning, he was performing marriages for his disciples. And some of them got divorced. And Srila Prabhupada, he didn't like this very much. And it was kind of shocking because it's like, you're getting married, you're making these vows, but yet you're breaking them. So in the Shastras, we have niyamagraha, one is to follow the rules and regulations for the sake of just following rules and regulations, dharma, just for the sake of doing it, not for the sake of making spiritual advancement. And then one is to neglect it whimsically and just kind of do whatever you feel like doing. And in America, we tend to have a tendency towards neglecting, just kind of doing whatever we feel like doing. But Srimad Bhagavatam, it comes at us with establishing the ultimate Dharma. And so generally, you see with the characters in Srimad Bhagavatam, they don't have an issue with whimsically neglecting Dharma, as people in Kali Yuga. It says that one who gives up their duty because it is troublesome or burdensome is renouncing in the mode of passion. Sometimes people might think, oh, I'm giving up my duty to make spiritual advancement, but it could just be that you're renouncing in the mode of passion. So these things have to be done very carefully. We see that Srila Prabhupada, when he got the order from his spiritual master to go preach in the West, he didn't do it immediately because he said, I had responsibility for my wife, for my children. But we see that later, after the children were grown up and all the family affairs were managed in this way, Srila Prabhupada, he did take sannyas and he did go to the West. So it was, we can see that Srila Prabhupada set an example. He didn't just renounce and go, but he made sure everything was taken care of. Of course, it is said that one of his daughters wasn't yet married, but still the situation with his family was such, and his wife sold the Srimad Bhagavatam, that, it was kind of the last straw. But anyway, so the point is, we see in a traditional society, people had some dharma to follow, and they followed it. So in this text, particularly, in this part of the Bhagavatam that we're studying, the Prachetas, they're doing this. They have some dharma, material dharma, and their father has given them some order, and so they're going and they're doing austerities and they're doing it. And so they come, while they're on their way to do their austerities, they come across this beautiful lake near Mount Kailash, and it is described that the scenery is totally perfect for doing the austerities that they're going to do. And because the Prachetas are pious, it's described that one has to be a little bit pious to take to a devotional service. They're attracting Lord Shiva, who is Dharma Vatsala. And Lord Shiva, we can see in this verse, he's ultimately attracted by devotion. It's said here that, he has to deal sometimes with very low types of characters. But occasionally they follow the religious principles and he blesses them. But ultimately, when Lord Shiva is attracted to his Vaishnavas. So as we've read about in the previous verses, that Lord Shiva generally doesn't appear in front of people. It mentioned that, they'll do these various things for Lord Shiva, but he won't appear in front of them. But Lord Shiva, being a Vaishnava, is very much attracted to the Vaishnavas. So an example is given in London at the Bhaktivedanta Manor when the devotees were doing kirtan with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada said later, did you see Lord Shiva and Narada Muni? They came here. Because them being devotees, they're very much attracted to devotional service. They were attracted to Srila Prabhupada's bhakti. So this is ultimately, because Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee of Krishna, this is the thing that attracts him. So by performing devotional activities, it helps you to get the blessings of senior devotees. And because the Prachetas are themselves, they're doing some dharma, they're pious, so therefore they're also attracting the blessings of Lord Shiva, and they're getting the blessings. And by doing one's pious duty, it helps prepare one for getting the blessings of senior devotees. So the Lord Shiva is about to speak to them the glories of Krishna. Because seeing the Prachetas are pious and doing their duty, he sees that they're fit for hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they already know about their material dharma. So he's going to be speaking to them these glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to give them ultimate Dharma, which is where Srimad Bhagavatam starts off in the first canto. So what is the ultimate Dharma for every living being? Yes, Sevaya Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Rahoksaje Ahai Tukiya Pratiyata Yinama Supersidati. So there's these very sweet verses. Oh gosh, I hope I did not forget my phone. I marked it. First canto. Srila Prabhupada really put everything in the first canto. That wasn't a joke. Everything is there. So, first canto, second chapter. It's mentioned in the 8th text. The occupational activities a man performs according to his position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. And then Srila Prabhupada says, he translated this verse, and he actually said that this verse is the most important verse in the Bhagavatam. Dharmasya hi apavargasya nato ritayayo pakalpate nartasya dharmamakantasya kamolavaya hi smrtaha. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. Therefore, they should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Life's desires, and this is text 10, should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. So, with these songs that with this song that Lord Shiva here is about to sing and what he's about to say, we're going to see here that he is giving the ultimate Dharma. Because really, in true nature, we have a material Dharma, and oftentimes that's described as some duty, but it doesn't really give the full meaning of what Dharma actually is. The ultimate Dharma of a living being is that which does not change. So Prabhupada would give the very simple example that if you touch water, you're going to become wet, because the Dharma of water is like wetness. Similarly, if you eat sugar, it's going to be sweet, because that's the Dharma of sugar, to be sweet. So therefore, in the material world, one has their particular material duties, which should be done. I mean, that's why the ashrams exist and the varnas exist. But these change, because one can be a kshatriya in one life, and then one can be a brahmana in the next life. As we see with the King Nigra, he was a very, pious king in karmakanda activities. And then, next life he became a lizard because of one particular slip up. And later we're going to read about King Pranjana, who was also a king. And of course, this is an allegory, but it gives the point of what actually does happen. He then became a woman in his next life. So where we're at, in the material world, that can change. When they have a very high position, next day, you might have a position of like an animal, because karma is very intricate. We were reading, when I was giving a class yesterday, about, it's in the second canto, and it's talking about the abode of Yamaraj at the very end of this purport, talking about how there's this lake you have to go across, or this stream that you have to go across to get to the Platonic area of Yamaraj, it says. And, Yamaraj, he was giving punishments to various living entities. And one person brought up in the class, it's very interesting that one can have, this punishment from Yamaraj, and then later, become a brahmana, or in the next life become this or become that. So what we are materially and what our duty is materially, that changes. That doesn't stay with us eternally. But what stays with us eternally is that we're a part and parcel of Krishna. We're all servants of Krishna. And no matter what position we're in, that doesn't change. Whether actually, one is in a woman's body, one is in a man's body, one is in, king's body, president's body, whatever. The ultimate goal is to serve Krishna. So this is what the Bhagavatam gets at over and over again, is that really human life is meant for developing devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that the Dharma that one has, it's ultimately meant, the material Dharma that one has, it's ultimately meant for pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because you can do material Dharma, you can do it very nicely. But that won't necessarily get you out of the material world. Like I had one friend one time, and she was a brahmacharini. She ran across this devotee, and he wasn't from India, but he had spent most of his Krishna consciousness in India. And he was talking to her about Krishna consciousness, and keep in mind she was only about 6 months in the movement. And he told her, you should get married as soon as possible. Because it's the dharma of a woman to, in the Vedas, to serve husband. And so you should get married as soon as possible. And because even if, all you have to do is serve your husband very nicely, and even if you don't go back to Godhead, you'll attain the heavenly planets. and she came to me, and she said, Lavanga, should I go find a husband? And I said, well, there are material duties in this world, but no, our ultimate goal is not to go to the heavenly planets. So by performing one's varnashram duty perfectly, without developing bhakti, you might go to some higher planetary system, but that won't get you out of the material world. So what's the example we see here in Bhagavatam? What's the example we've seen here previously? We see that Dhruva Maharaj, we see that Prithu Maharaj, they did their duties, their occupational duties, but they were performing devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it wasn't that they were doing this independently of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or that they were doing this for some sort of material benefit. But there can be a tendency in society to do one's duty to get some type of reward. Even though, like we don't have demigod worship so much here in the West. I was explaining in class yesterday that our mentality in the West, the way we do things sometimes, especially if you're raised in a Christian background, is that one will treat God as if he's like a demigod. They'll do some activity and then, I'll get the blessings of Jesus. I'll get the blessings of Mary. I'll get the blessings of God himself. So I'll give some extra money to the church. Or I'll do some activity for the poor, and then I'll get some blessings from the Lord, and I'll get what I want materially. So that mentality can be there, and I'll take care of my family because God will be very pleased with me if I take care of my family and I do my duties, and then I'll get blessings and things will go well. But one should not forget that actually that's not the goal of life. The goal of life is to develop love for Krishna. And so we see with the pure devotees, even they will neglect Dharma sometimes, even for the sake of coming to Krishna or coming closer to Krishna and doing devotional service. So the example that's often given in the 10th canto is the wives of the Brahmanas. When Krishna and Balaram, they were playing with their friends, and Krishna was very much hungry. So he told his friends, these Brahmanas are doing the yajnas, and they're chanting mantras very perfectly. They were doing their dharma. And so Krishna told his friends, go over there and ask them for some food. And they got Balaram to go. Because, Krishna, is playing like Balaram's a Kshatriya. They'll listen to him a little bit better. I'm just a Vaishya. And so they go over there and they're asking the Brahmanas, please, Krishna and Balaram are hungry. Can you give some of your offerings? and they were totally ignored by them. And Brahmanas didn't even pay attention. So what was the point of the whole Dharma? The point of the whole Dharma is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But yet we see that the Brahmanas were, Krishna was right there, and they were being completely ignored. But when they went back and Krishna said, go to their wives, the wives immediately said, oh, Krishna is there? And they immediately took their bhoga and their offerings, and they went out to meet Krishna. They left their home, left their husband, went out to meet Krishna, and to give them these offerings. And so they were willing to give all that up because they understood the goal of life. And Krishna then later told them, you should go back home. And they said, we can't go back home now. Our husbands won't accept us. And Krishna said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. They'll take you back. Because in, Vedic society, a girl couldn't go out like that. And so they went home, and then their husbands realized, oh, we made this, great mistake. And, Krishna and Balaram were right there. Our wives got it. We didn't get it. We also see in the example of the gopis, when Krishna played his flute, when Krishna called, the gopis immediately ran. That they said they had stuff on the stove. They had their children there, their husbands there, and they immediately left. And the ones that were stopped by their family members, they some of them even gave up their bodies, and they thought about Krishna in their head. They just went internal, and so they all ran out to meet Krishna. They didn't even stop to think, how am I dressed? It's described that they had one earring on one ear, one eye was done up with the makeup that they put on. It was all they just like, Krishna's calling me, let me go. And then when they went out to see Krishna, then Krishna played with them. What are you doing out here in the dead of the night? Why have you come here? Like he didn't know. And they're like, we come to see you. He's like, oh, you shouldn't be here. You should go home. But what did they say? No, we're not going home. We're going to be right here with you. And so we see that ultimately for the highest devotee, that they're even willing to give up dharma for the sake of Krishna, for the sake of pleasing Krishna. However, for the conditioned soul, one has to be very careful with this. This should always be done under the guidance of the spiritual master, because in the material world, one's duties can help one if one's doing their duties in a Krishna conscious way. Help one develop bhakti. It's supposed to be kind of like a springboard for getting to bhakti, and it keeps one disciplined, and it keeps one responsible, and it keeps one from being whimsical. And so we should always consult. That's why we need a guru. We need a spiritual master. We can't just read the books and think that we've got it, because we can interpret things in any other way. Okay, all right. I feel like my situation in life is not helping me become Krishna conscious, so therefore I'm just going to quit my job and leave my family. So you have to always check with guru and check with sadhus to be guided, because you don't want to end up in a situation that's even more unfavorable for your Krishna consciousness. However, one has to do something in this world to maintain themselves. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that one cannot even maintain their body without some type of work. So some work must be there. But we should understand that ultimately what the goal of life, is not to be very successful in my business, is not to be just a good family man, is not to be just a good wife, not even just to be a good brahmachari or a good sannyasi, but the ultimate goal is to have love and to please Krishna. So if Krishna is pleased by my current dharma, okay, yeah, I will do it. But if Krishna wants me to give it up, okay, I will give it up. Like we see with Kardama Muni, he did his dharma very nicely. And then later, after he had Kapila as his son, he gave up the dharma and he took sannyas. So, so this is what we're getting at this point of Srimad Bhagavatam. As I mentioned before, Lord Shiva has now arrived on the scene, and he's going to give the prachetas very nice instructions about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they're going to take this with them, and later they will take away. But this is why hearing Srimad Bhagavatam every day is very important, so that we don't get distracted and that we don't get lost. Because there's a tendency to sometimes get lost in our own duties. Okay, I have to do this, I have to take care of that. But we should keep the goal in mind, because this life is very short and human life is very rare. And you never know what situation you're going to be in your next life. So, and you never even know what situation you're going to be in at the end of life. My mother right now is taking care of my grandparents. And as I mentioned, my grandfather has Parkinson's, and he's actually been in the hospital for the past 2 weeks. I talked to my mother yesterday. And because his body became extremely weak, so they took him into the hospital, and they found out that his iron was extremely low. And so they did some tests after they had to beg them, and they put some camera in his throat, and they found out that he had stomach ulcers. Stomach ulcers keep your body from absorbing nutrients. And so he has the Parkinson's on top of the stomach ulcers. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because my grandfather, every morning, he had a job, and every morning him and my grandmother would be reading the Bible together, before they went off and did their daily duties. I remember waking up as a child, I would see them reading Bible, and then they would do a prayer. And they'd always invite me to come join, come sit, hear the Bible. And they would read, and then they would do a prayer every day religiously without fail. But now my grandfather is in such a condition that he can't even turn the page of a book. This is a man that used to play guitar. They used to pick me up with one hand. So we never know, what situation we're going to be in at the end of life. So that's why it's very important that we hear the Shastras now. We understand what is the ultimate duty for human society. Because, human life, it's short, and there's disease, and there's all sorts of challenges. So take advantage of it while you have the opportunity. And so that's ultimately the ultimate goal of what Srimad Bhagavatam gets at, and how we're going to kind of end this chapter. So it's 8:40, and I think I'll stop here to see if there's any discussion or any thoughts on this class. Okay.
I have a little bit of it's kind of a technical question that came to my mind, because I was just listening to this story in the Krishna book about, the gopis going to be with Krishna, and it said that how we shouldn't imitate Krishna and, think we can just go dance with a bunch of young girls, and then it said, it was just their spiritual bodies had gone to go dance with Krishna, but their physical bodies were still at home with their husbands. Mm. And so I was just wondering how that works out then with it says like some of the gopis were prevented from going, and then they left their bodies.
Right, both things are said, aren't they? Yeah. I've wondered that myself, Krishna. And the gopis give, and they understand that that's pure, and that what the gopis do is pure and spiritual. And then there are people that think, why would they do that? So then, I think, sometimes there's some concession, but well, technically it wasn't really they let the material bodies there. Like it said when Ravana kidnapped Sita.
Right.
That as soon as he crossed the line, Sita, the real Sita, spiritual form, went away, and he only got like a material, like not even the real form of Sita. Like he technically didn't kidnap the real Sita, because people, even you read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a devotee of Lord Chaitanya that's like really morose, that Ravana took Sita, and how could this happen? And Lord Chaitanya calmed him down and said, well, technically it wasn't the real one. But you see, you can, these pastimes are used to make multiple points. It's just like, and so you have both there. And that's why Krishna's pastimes are inconceivable. Same thing, one of our acharyas, sometimes he'll make the argument that Krishna was actually married to the gopis.
Mm-hmm.
And there are even pastimes, I've heard from Varshana Maharaj, that show how Krishna technically in one sense married all the gopis. There are other pastimes. But but this, satisfies those who can't accept Parkiras and things like that. So there's the whole, it's both, The way I can understand it is that both are there. And also sometimes when they wrap up in one area, they go take place in another. So somewhere one of the pastimes is always going on, that they don't always, they'll change the details sometimes. They won't always happen in the exact same way, kind of like a play. When actors have to perform a play multiple times, sometimes they'll change details, they'll change lines. The ultimate goal is come the same. So I've heard from senior devotees that sometimes, Krishna, this detail will happen then, and then that detail will happen there. And then also we have to keep in mind too that with Srimad Bhagavatam, we have roughly 18,000 verses. But in one purport, Srila Prabhupada says that Srimad Bhagavatam can be explained in, 4 verses or 40,000. Because on higher planets, it's more elaborated on. So yeah, it can be kind of confusing to us, but when we see things like that, but I just try to keep those things.
To ask this question, and then you started telling it.
That as well, just like I've also caught that 16 when he did Rasa dance, in some places it says he was 8, right? I think we were hearing that yesterday. That, he was 8 years old, so
Okay. Yeah.
Are there any other thoughts, Baruji?
We got a Chris here.
Oh, Chris? Okay.
When the gopis left their bodies, that may just have been temporary. They might have come back again. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't necessarily mean they died, I don't think. So the two things could be true at the same time. Yeah. If they couldn't go physically, then they could just go spiritually.
Right.
Let's see. I was just thinking, I just watched a nice little video that you might like to see. The title really intrigued me because it was said when Srila Prabhupada met Lord Shiva. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. And it was talking about, if I can summarize, Jagannath Puri, and you might be able to help me maybe know some about this, but it was saying that the devotees weren't, Srila Prabhupada's disciples weren't allowed to go there. So he kind of avoided that area from my understanding of the video. And then it was said that, I forget if it's like Linga Raj or Raj Lingam, the king of lingams is there. And it was saying that
in the higher planetary systems, there's 100 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam.
100 cantos, wow.
We have 12.
Wow. I guess people live much longer. That's amazing.
I don't know if that would fit on my bookshelf.
It's all done by memory.
Yeah, that's an important point because the fact that we have to write stuff down shows that we're degrading in human society. They used to just speak it and you remember it perfectly. And even the 12 cantos, most devotees have a hard time getting through that. By Sheshika, he's had to be a sage page by page and, tell you how many pages. You read 4 pages a day, you finish the Bhagavatam in 8 years or something like that. So on the higher planets, they have much, Srimad Bhagavatam is expounded on, in greater detail. But we're on the track for people who are short-lived, lazy, unintelligent, and misguided. So, we get 12. Anyway, It doesn't matter because everything here is needed for us to go back to Godhead. And Krishna's pastimes describe it. Anantashesha, he is eternally glorifying the Supreme Lord, but the planetary system that's on his head, and he still hasn't reached the end of it. So Krishna could talk and go on and on and on and on and on forever and never end. All right. Are there any other points before we wrap up? I think I see the light turning on in the. Okay. Oh yeah, Mother Tsunami just brought something out. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap up so everybody can get in line so they don't miss breakfast.